I was very glad to hear of your safe return, Master. All the talk of rebels, separatists, bandits, and yet the most dangerous part of the journey was stepping into the Senate chamber. What a den of wolves it has become. They were not agreeable then? Not particularly. They seemed to at least be somewhat aware of my contribution to their empire. Still not entirely against writing my name on every coin we send them, just to be sure. But no, Father, there was not a single voice among them to speak for me. They say rather openly that they do not trust the second consul to be brother of the first. I think they want one of their own men to fill the role, but they have no one with any notoriety to actually step forward. Their best men have been sent to try and reel in Constans, supposedly. Was Julianus there? No. He's doing the Senate's dirty work to try and win them over for some reason. They think he is a fool, and I expect it is mutual. I'm staying cleanly out of it. But surely they would not have a problem with you becoming consul if Julianus were no longer consul. Are you volunteering to assassinate him, Father? Do not even think such things. But he could be persuaded to step down. I hope that happens, but I will not be the one to do it. We are going to sit right where we are and cheer as our friends retake Gaul. They, more than our own masters, shall brighten our future, as will the Lord. Hello there and welcome back to another episode of Fields of Mars. Last time we managed to finish off the multi-wave invasion from the east coming towards the recently captured Nicomedia, especially thanks to a suicidal enemy king. We then saw Tullus mysteriously die of natural causes and be instantly replaced by Constans. He started bringing that army over to the east, where at the same time his son Septimus had taken over his old army and was using it to destroy some Aryan invaders. Constans, after arriving, started looking for openings to attack the Sassanids, but as ever they surprised us with how much stuff they have and left him facing a difficult battle. So here we go. We've struggled before fighting 2 stacks of Sassanids, this time 3 stacks coming at us as we form up on a hill in the background there, ready to defend against this first army, which is not waiting for its reinforcements very kindly for us, and they're starting things off with the old favourite tactic of a cataphract charge, but they seem to hesitate at the last second about whether they're actually going to do it. They still seem to have enough distance to get a decent charge off though and knock our lines about a little bit, but overall the damage going to be minimal, and the fact that our guys are in testudo formation will give them a bonus against cavalry, making the melee that comes subsequently easier to win. You can see all of my ranged units are just doing nothing. I've got everyone off fire at will for this battle. I'm going to actively try to micro ranged units and minimize friendly fire, because I suspect friendly fire is actually one of the leading causes of damage in these kind of noob box style formations, to prevent the enemy's arrow fire from damaging us. So in comes the first wave of their infantry. Much of the infantry is just spearmen, not going to do very well in melee against the legionaries, but other groups are actually elite swordsmen who will be a decent match. So it's going to be a mixed bag how all of these infantry fights go, but we're basically buying time here. We want to force the enemy to inflict friendly fire on themselves and basically just lock the enemy in position to try and give us opportunities to attack the enemy with our more mobile elements, which, as you can see from the minimap, are actually in the corners of the map right now waiting to do something. The enemy have tons of foot archers in this first army who are just raining arrows all over the place, but as you can see, some of them are actually standing in undergrowth, which we can set on fire using the onagers, doing massive damage to those units, which is very nice indeed. We'll also micro our own ranged units to be returning fire against them to try and slowly reduce the threat from those archers. But the archers, curiously, actually weren't really firing at our front line. They were firing back at our own ranged units, which is the correct thing to do in this situation. So we started taking hefty losses, and Constans too, with his newly upgraded Praetorian cavalry, started taking fire as well and had to start dancing around at the back. The disadvantage of hugging the line, the edge of the battlefield here, means there's really nowhere for him to escape, so it's going to be difficult to avoid that fire. We need to take the archers out, and that's why I'm finally deploying all of these legionary cavalry rushing down from this hill in the east, not only to take out the archers, but also to catch the enemy's general, who was just kind of standing on his own with only a half-strength unit, so sending in 3 units of legionary cav should be easily enough to take him down. Their cavalry is pretty good, but legionary cav's pretty good as well, and we do manage to get that kill on the enemy general. That's a 1 of 3 at the very least, and I think the first general was the highest ranking one, so that is nice. All of these local troops are going to be now demoralized by that, and the archers, of course, who are now basically without support, are going to be in huge trouble as they attempt to escape through the burning forest to get away from this massive wall of legionary cav just rushing down this hill towards them. Not much they can do to avoid this, and we want to be as merciless as possible, because if we stop for even a second they'll start shooting us up, and they may even be able to escape entirely if they're able to pressure our cav into leaving. So we'll take them all out, and then of course the cav can focus on coming over to resolve the infantry fights by just hitting them from behind. With that enemy general dead, this is going to make it nice and easy because the enemy's morale is already low. Although that said, you can see some of these units really do take some persuading to go. They will fight for a long time because these units are basically good Sassanid units. They have high morale. This other unit comes in to join the rout, apparently jumping into the middle of the squads of men who are trying to escape. That means I have to fight them, because if my cavalry try to pull out while there's a unit there, you'll get that whole movement removes your melee defense thing, which plagues this game. Anyway, the second army now on the way, as the first army looking like it's going to be defeated, and they basically arrive just in time to see the last of the first army get wiped out. So the battle is just going to basically continue, or reset even, as we just fight another army immediately after the first one. Now my cav need to rush to the western portion of the map because the enemy's right flank now has camels and more cavalry. The camels are particularly worried because they are a counter to cavalry. They get a bonus, and they're also decent against infantry as well because they have armor-piercing weapons, these particular camels. My cav ended up having to actually go back inside the nuke box because a cataphract charge was about to hit them in the flank, and I just about caught it in time. So we all rush through, basically blasting through our own testudo there, so they'll have to quickly reform. And the cataphracts just seem a little bit listless now. They can't really continue their charge, and they just trot forward and end up fighting my men in melee, which is perfect for me. Anyway, so that kind of worked out, but our cav will have to find a way to escape from our own lines now. Meanwhile, they're also attacking on the other flank with their cav and camels. They'll do okay because our infantry are kind of weak against these attacks, but especially here where the camels are fighting, we've got spearmen moving in to counter, and we do good damage to them before they try to escape, so that's all well and good. Now our missile units are going to have a lot of work right now because this second army is full, instead of archers, of hurlers, and this is a far more formidable opponent. They have shields to resist missile fire, and they are much more powerful as a ranged unit and more effective against armored targets, which of course we have plenty of. Round 2 is going to be a harder one. Hey, get back here! No one breaks formation!
Centurion, my shield is out there. Idiot tried to run with his axe stuck in it and dragged it down the hill. I'll just grab it.
You are the idiot. Go back and tend to the wounded.
But I need to keep fighting. I haven't killed anyone yet. I promised Mars I would spill blood for him today.
Mars, huh? You'll only be spilling your own, or those of my men, if you don't keep the shield wall closed. Time it takes you to get to that damn shield, you'll be explaining to Tullus why you died with 1,000 holes in you.
Mars will punish me as an oathbreaker. Isn't that worse than death?
Mars stopped caring a long time ago. Clear out those wounded now! While our troops on the front line are taking plenty of missile fire, Constans is having the same problem, and for him it's more of a problem because it's so damaging to his cavalry unit. Right now I'm trying to rush him about inside our box to find a point where he's in the range of the fewest number of enemy ranged units. You can see I moved him over to the west side, then immediately realised the east side was going to be a superior choice because I'm about to actually destroy one of the enemy's ranged units over there. Plus we now have the cavalry coming in, so we might be able to save him by just taking out all those ranged units. You can see they're all unguarded by infantry, so we'll rear attack them soon. Here's that unit on the end, which is just taking tons of crossbow fire, so that's going to free up a nice space for Constans to wait right on the edge of our formation without too much fire. And then our cavalry come in to rear attack those units, of course, and Constans goes out to take some revenge in this case. He is not going to just let the battle go on without him. He will charge out to destroy all of these slinger units, which already took out about half of his troops. So that's all well and good. Most of those slingers will be destroyed, and just in time, because the enemy did react to this, they sent back some spear units to try and clear us out, but it was far too late. We got the targets. Now, with those ranged units defeated, it means we can start doing flank attacks on the enemy's main bulk of troops, because now it's safe to present the flanks of those units to the enemy's approach direction without them just being cut down by hurler fire instantly. So with that done, the enemy seems to react here by sending their swordsmen towards my flanking unit, running across the face of the unit it was already engaging. A disastrous move, because they are now going to be wiped out because of that lack of melee defense while moving thing, and they just shatter pretty fast. So now we can support our center with that left flank. Our cavalry going to disengage for now. They're all totally out of stamina, so I'm just putting them in a hidden position while that stamina restores, which won't take all that long at all. We had one unit of cav still on the field, the Equite Auxilia, who are the inferior cavalry unit, but still good enough to come and make a nice rear attack on these enemy sword troops, who are going to get destroyed, crushed up against my legionaries there. So we'll quickly wipe them out, and we need to do that very quickly because there are spearmen coming in, and we just about get out of the way in time to avoid getting rear attacked by those spears. And the nearby archers are now targeting the spears. The spears start running away, but then the archers get rear attacks on them. They start getting wiped out and they shatter. So basically this second army's infantry has now almost all been taken out. There's a few units just chasing our cav around the place. Our ranged infantry looking particularly damaged from the enemy's ranged fire, and you can see the long line of bodies representing where that front line was just now. I've moved what infantry we have left to form a wider nude box, so there's more space inside for us to move around if we get another situation like how Constans was trapped earlier. And of course we now just prepare for a third army to arrive, and arrive it does, coming in with the remnants of the second army's infantry to support its attack. Just going to rush in. Our troops are all going to be high on energy, so that's going to help out quite a lot in these melee fights, but we're also low on actual troops. So here when these cataphracts are smashing into our legionaries, they're on the verge of breaking through here, so hopefully we can hold them off just a tiny bit longer. We don't have any reserves in this fight, so we can't plug gaps in the line. We really need to actually just defeat every unit as it comes in. Now this third army, instead of archers or hurlers, is actually mostly crossbow cav for its ranged component, so that's the worst of all of those worlds really, because they're going to be doing armor piercing damage, firing pretty fast, and are very hard to take down themselves. This unit of camels getting 2 flank attacks on 2 units here, pretty nice, although that will also count as a flank attack against it because of how the flanks are calculated, so it will probably rout very soon. And this unit on our extreme edge of the line getting wiped out. I saw a volley of crossbow bolts come in and kill half of that spear cohort unit. They're turning to face the guys firing at it so they can reform their stationary testudo to hopefully block out more of that attack. But the enemy's infantry are about to basically finish off our front line. They'll soon break through, and then it's going to be up to our ranged infantry to either shoot the enemy at point blank range or fight the enemy in melee, which is unlikely to go very well. So this is really the time for those cavalry to come back, and they do arrive just in time. The enemy's crossbow cav on their right flank basically got taken out by our crossbows, our foot crossbows. So this allowed me to move the cavalry in safely to start doing battles. They still had some of their melee cav here, but it's mostly cataphracts, which are actually weak once you get them into a stationary fight, and that is what we managed to do. So basically a big blobby engagement starts up here with more of their hurlers being drawn into the fight, which is just what we need. But the rest of the enemy's third army is coming in drips and drabs, and that means basically units are going to keep coming into this fight one by one, including more crossbow cav and including camels, the bane of our cavalry. The problem was my guys are already engaged, so I can't make them leave to get out the way of these camels, so the camels are just going to charge into this engagement, and there's more where they came from. I realized this fight will get worse and worse, so I decided to just try it, to cross my fingers and see if any of our cavalry could escape from this melee. The answer to that is going to be no. This virtually never works, and this is not one of the rare exceptions. We lose pretty much everything. All of our units were about 80-90% strength. 2 of them are all but wiped out. 1 escapes with half of its troops there. So we're still going to have something we can use later on, but basically, in the blink of an eye, we lost everything to the enemy's cavalry advance there, despite our cavalry technically being better than theirs. Not nice at all, and those units will now plough on to hit our front line, which could really do with not being hit right now, especially by units with armor-piercing damage like those camels. This is going to be a little bit close here. We do still, though, have a pretty healthy right flank, and I'm trying to deploy archers to clear out all of the crossbow cav nearby to make it safe for them to fold around and do something, because our centre and left is very much about to disappear. Father writes, firstly, we are not to follow him east as previously discussed. Secondly, he seems to believe that the Sassanids have him cornered. He writes much on the arrangements we are to make for his funeral. He says nothing of who will now command those Senate troops, but I think he may intend for them to need funerals along with him. He doesn't even ask for aid. Not like him at all. We'll need scouts out there. You, go and create a party to find out what happened. And if the Sassanids have power enough to crush the legions that conquered Italy out there, combined with what we've seen to the south, then we should double our drills. You, ride to Constantinopolis and prepare new troops. Do the standards first and send them on ahead. They make empty tents seem a lot more dangerous to the enemy. I've got one more unit to deploy on my left flank. It's the Mattiarii Javeliniers, and they get into position to attack these spearmen in the flank, and that's a pretty nice attack because it's going to stop them from defeating my legionaries, which they are now outflanking, and the legionaries somehow are able to defeat these spearmen that they were fighting to their front. Them shattering surely helps these guys shatter as well, along with those casualties, and suddenly the left flank is looking a lot better. In the centre, another unit routes as well there, and it basically leaves the enemy with actually no real melee capacity. They've got one unit of camels and some cataphracts at the back of the map, but they've still got all their crossbow cav. I'm going to give up on fighting with my archers and try and draw them to just shoot at my shield walls. Meanwhile, Constans is forced to come back into the fight to deal with the camels, being basically the only unit with any melee stats we have nearby, and those camels were just absolutely crushing all of my Mattiarii. So even though Constans has a disadvantage in that fight, I'm going to allow him to fight it, and he does eventually win. And what remains of our army is now just facing off against the crossbow cav, basically. We go into our stationary testudos, of course, to just absorb all that crossbow fire. And you can see how just continuous bolts are raining down. All three of their units actually attacked the same one of my legionary units. So they took a really heavy bombardment. However, they didn't actually lose a single man to all of the rest of the ammunition from these crossbow cav. It was very impressive. The stationary testudo really does do the job when it needs to. And these crossbow cav, now out of ammo, just charge forwards to attack the unit in melee. So that's not going to do all that much damage. They've got a decent charge bonus, so they do get a little bit of penetration there, but basically our men will have superior melee stats, and we're even going to be able to outnumber them just about with our remaining troops. The enemy's morale going to be low due to losing their officers as well, so they don't fight for very long, leaving just one unit out here which looked like it was about to charge my spears. It thought better of it at the last second, but I'm able to catch it from behind with some Equite Auxilia, who are basically stalking this unit around the battlefield. That causes them to shatter. And that's going to be the last, finally, of those three armies. It's a Pyrrhic victory for our forces, a Pyrrhic victory indeed, perhaps even worse than a Pyrrhic victory if such a thing exists. We appear to have won, but we also lost pretty much the entire army in the process of doing so. Let's look at the detailed results. Only 3 units completely defeated, although they are units that will be difficult to re-recruit, of course. The rest of the army in terrible condition, including the ranged units who often get away with battles like this. We've got a couple of units still in the green there who will basically now form the core of our army, a couple of hundred men left over. Looking at the casualties taken by the enemy, I was a little bit disappointed with how that second army seemed to get away with most of its units still alive. The first and third armies really damaged. They are not going to do very much against us from now on, but that second army probably in a couple of turns will be able to just come back and continue its attacks against us, so that is a shame. I thought we might get all 3 completely wiped out, but 2 is still something, although probably not a worthy exchange for how many troops we lost on our side. We'll need to get our own troops back to make it a worthy exchange. And the question of whether we can do that is going to depend on what the Sassanids do next. We saw that 4th army there that I thought was going to come and engage me earlier, just ran away, so I figured they were out of movement points, but apparently they did still have movement points but didn't want to join the first attack. And after they run away, as we can see here, another stack appears, as the Sassanids tend to do. There's always another stack somewhere that can just appear and attack you. So we've got another battle, this time a balanced engagement, our half-dead army against their full one with a decent commander, but our troops are just generally better, so we're still going to have a pretty decent chance here. We get some nice, or at least interesting, terrain where we're atop these cliffs and some of our flanks are protected by small stretches of impassable terrain. So that is very nice. We're going to be forming testudos at the top, ready to receive the usual cataphract charges and crossbow bolt volleys, but it seems most of the enemy's cavalry were actually going towards this one unit I'd hidden off far to the flank. You can see they're all walking towards it rather than me, and I thought maybe the AI had just somehow decided it was there using its AI vision, so was going to go kill it before the battle started, so that wasn't looking particularly good. You can see though that this massively hilly terrain has caused the enemy army to be totally split up, all the faster units arriving much earlier, so that's nice at least. It turned out though that my equity auxiliary there were actually safe, because those cavalry were just doing a really wide flank attack, because there are more rocks that forces them to go wider than the AI usually does. So seeing that that was actually what's happening, I'm going to be folding around to protect my flanks there against these cavalry. They've got quite a lot of cavalry coming in here, so we really are going to be suffering under the fact we're so outnumbered in this battle here. So our one unit's going to have to hold off all of these different units, and we really just have to hope that the enemy don't go around us, because they can if they want. We simply don't have the numbers to stop them. So that battle gets started while some enemy infantry and elephants come in to clash with our front line of legionaries. I'm taking my guys out of testudo so they can enable their javelins, and of course the elephant's super weak against that, but we don't really do it in time. Some of the elephants do manage to get up here into the melee. We have crossbows and archers behind though who will be able to still shoot those elephants down. Plus our onagers coming in pretty useful in this fight, because there's more flammable terrain, and the precise angles of how the enemy are coming towards us basically means the onager shot goes through a couple of ranks of enemies before hitting the ground, so it does more damage than usual. They're also doing a sneak attack on this flank. I thought my left flank was really protected by all these cliffs, but there is a passable route up it, a tiny one at least, and I had a unit of about 10 men guarding it, and fortunately that wasn't enough, so Constans is now forced to join the battle to stop those cavalry breaking through. On the other flank, we're just about stopping the enemy's cavalry from getting into our rear, our own cavalry being forced into those melees to try and stop them, but we're running out of troops fast and our men are totally surrounded, not looking very good. And on the front line the pressure is just solidly coming in. We're just gonna have to hope we win this little grind here.
You were wrong, father! You were wrong! Look at what has become of your legionaries. Tall shields cannot protect them. They are but a hefty weight on tired arms, and the gods cannot protect them. You presumed that to play for their favor would not fail? The gods are not out here, father, perhaps by their own choice. Was it by their graces that we fought so far? Then why abandon us now? What if this was all a ruse to feed brave men into a great gladiatorial game? What if Mars is equally happy to see a stinking, bearded desert rat do his work? Could you answer that, father? You dabble in what you don't understand. You brought all this, forced all this upon me. Watch as your men fall, and tell me why the gods are laughing.
The cavalry on the right flank were repulsed but then came back for another charge. Unfortunately, one of my units chasing one of theirs as it ran away is now going to get caught out in the open. I just about turned them around in time to avoid taking a rear charge, but they're now stuck in that combat and the other unit can come back in to rear attack them. So our infantry will just have to hold off the rest of the cav on their own, and on the front lines the grind continues. It's really just one of our units fighting this battle because of how the enemy are positioned, but our onager there getting some real good value, dropping shots danger close into these nice blobs of enemies, with the cavalry amongst them actually being their general, so important kills to be getting. There are javelins being thrown up by those skirmishers back there though, which are really damaging both my line and in particular my archers behind, who are beginning to get knocked out of this fight as they attempt to return fire. My other two units basically just standing there and taking slinger and crossbow cav fire right now. We managed to defeat one of those cataphract units out on the flank, but we've lost pretty much all our legionary cav in the process, and our crossbows are now just firing into that melee to kill everyone. The other two units also locked down by ranged cavalry fire, so just doing nothing, trying not to die basically. We need this one unit of legionaries fighting all of the fight. to actually win out with our ranged units providing much needed support. There's that onager again with some supreme shots right into these huge dense enemy formations. Going to get real good value out of this onager in this battle. We're really looking to kill the enemy's general here, of course. He has come up into the melee and he doesn't have all that much protecting him at this point, and there he goes. I'm not sure if he was actually killed by the onager there because the message came up right at the same point, but it looks like he might have been slightly off to the side. Whatever killed him, that's going to be a very important stage in the battle. The enemy's cataphracts in the distance routed, and I've also at the same time made an attack on their onagers from behind with my Equite Auxilia, who are waiting far off from the formation. So with that successful, I sent them to take out these hurlers. That should free up more of my legionaries to take action against the enemy's surviving infantry and basically allow us to close out this battle now. But the surviving enemy general's bodyguards came in for a rear attack on those Equite Auxilia, and that's going to be devastating, especially because it's super downhill. So we're basically going to lose that cavalry unit. It's going to be a sacrifice to allow the rest of our army to move, and once we did, we basically wiped out the enemy's infantry pretty much right away. With their general gone, they didn't really want to fight anymore, and my ranged units now are put to work trying to take out all of the enemy's ranged cavalry, but we didn't have to do too much to achieve that because they just left after we started firing at them and the battle suddenly came to an end. So it was looking pretty bad for a second there, but it all got turned around and ended in a close victory for our forces. But again, the losses taken are not going to be worth it. We can see we lost 2 whole units, including a legionary unit and some legionary cavalry, which we can't re-recruit. The enemy losing only 4 units, those elephants particularly nice ones to take down, but overall, most of their army's units are still alive, so they will theoretically come back at full strength in just a few turns if they can get back to their own territory. So that is pretty nasty. We'll take on warriors, which will get a few of our troops back, but you can see how the Sassanids moved there. We're now actually trapped because all of their zones of control stop us from going back to our territory, or at least they did until Pontus suddenly showed up and actually defeated the survivors of that battle there. So that suddenly will mean that all of that fight we just did is going to be very much in our favour. We've basically taken out the whole army in tandem with Pontus. Now, Constans may have survived. We get news that Orneni, his wife, back in Londinium apparently, has died. He may not necessarily care about that, but perhaps there is some sort of fateful action going on here, that one of the two had to die during this end turn. So we can now look at the situation with the Sassanids. We're still actually blocked in by them. We still can't go back to our territory, but because of that victory from Pontus, the army that's blocking us going back to Constantinople is now just a couple of units strong, and Septimus can actually just move out to auto-resolve them out of existence. So that's going to clear a path for Constans to actually make it back to safety. That could have gone wrong at so many points, but we've somehow gotten away with all that. Constans returns to Constantinople. His force will begin to replenish, and we'll have to recruit some new inferior units to fill out all of the units that are now missing after all those fights. So we've been weakened by this. The Sassanids, we don't know if they've been weakened. They may have been, but they're very likely to simply come back with more of those armies very soon, so I don't know if this will have any long-term benefit. I was thinking of actually advancing Septimus to try and hammer home some benefit from all this, but I saw another full stack in that city, and the city itself has a full stack garrison. So seeing that, I decided to just do nothing for now. We'll wait for Constans' strength to replenish before we do any movements, if we want to do any movements at all after what keeps happening. Now, there was a very interesting thing I spotted here. It's Attila. He has returned to our territory, apparently alone with only half an army, so I moved Aurelianus out immediately to go and challenge him, seeing this as a key opportunity. He did, though, have a full stack just hidden in the fog of war behind him on the other side of that river, and that's going to come in to reinforce, making this actually a balanced engagement, but still perhaps worth fighting, because you can see Attila's units basically dead. This is a great opportunity to take him out, and according to the balance bar, we should be able to win the battle as well. So we'll get into that next time. By inheriting the remains of the Eastern Empire, the Britannian Romans had also inherited an unrelenting rivalry with the huge Sassanid coalition. Previously ready to conquer all of Rome, the Sassanids had been knocked off course by the sudden arrival of Constans and his men. They had become cautious, consolidating their gains around the rest of the empire while building large armies in Anatolia, ready to march on Thracia once again when the time was right. Time, manpower, supplies, and popular opinion were all on their side. The Romans had but one advantage: the superior equipment and training of their largely professional armies. But in battle after battle, this pool of elite warriors was drained irreplaceably. So that's all for now. Thank you so much for watching. We'll have to deal with some Hunnic witchcraft, and we'll get a chance to repay Pontus for clearing a path for Constans back there in the next episode of Fields of Mars.